I have a hatchet that I want to share with you today. This is made by the Canadian company Esker. If you're interested in hearing more about it, keep watching. Before we get started, I do want to thank the company Esker for sending out their hatchet so that I can share it with you. So I was aware of the company Esker for quite a few years. I think most Canadians who spend time in the outdoors, especially during winter, are probably aware of this company. They are most well known for their production of high quality, traditional style canvas hot tents and wood stoves to go with it. But I think they've only recently got into the production of axes. And when they reached out, I took a look at what they had to offer. Now, they had three at the time, at least they reached out to me. They had a full-size splitting axe. They had a camp axe, I think 24 inches. I'll have to verify that. And they had this hatchet. So I responded by asking them to send me the hatchet because this is the one that would most match my needs, the type of things that I do out here in the woods. But I'll tell you where you can take another look at the other axes if you're interested, because my friend Alex from Aurora Borealis Knives has also reviewed this hatchet and the axe, the camp axe that I mentioned. So I'll put a link to those videos at the end of this one if you want to check that out. Now, what I thought I would do is just focus in on the hatch for a couple of minutes to show you the key features and the quality that went into the building of this hatchet. We'll do a few demonstrations. I'll talk about my experiences using it, and then we'll wrap this video up. What I want to do before we get into the demonstrations is first off talk about the materials used in the Esker hatchet, talk about the design, and just a few more of its key features. So to start with, let's start with the head itself. So the head comes in at 1.6 pounds. It is made with a high carbon content steel. Esker says it is at 0.8, which means it would have more carbon than the average hatchet that usually comes in 1050, 1055, and even 1060. So it is a higher carbon content, and it's that should lend itself to an edge that remains sharper longer, as long as the heat treat matches the steel. Now, in this case, Esker tells me that the heat treatment has left the edge at 53 to 55 on the Rockwall scale. So that should keep a good edge without running the risk of being chippy. Now, it's only the edge that is hardened. The pawl is not hardened on this hatchet. Now, as I mentioned, this is made or hammer forged in Austria, shipped to Canada, and where it is assembled on a high quality 16-inch hickory handle. Now, I'll talk about the design of the head, and then we'll move back to the handle for a moment. So Esker refers to this as a Hudson Bay pattern. Now, the more I looked at it, I really felt it was more of a Montreal pattern look to it, or even a Rhineland pattern, German influence look to it than a Hudson Bay. It really doesn't make any difference. It's all about the performance. And in my opinion, this is a design that's perfect for the uses I'm putting it through, which is primarily splitting small pieces of wood. Now, I want to show you the handle, and as I mentioned, 16 inches in length. Now, when it came, it was fully uncoated, nicely finished. I have about 3 coatings of boiled linseed oil on it, so it just darkened it down a tiny bit. It still has that nice grippiness of wood without having that plastic type of a feeling that might come if you put too many coatings on and get that polymerization on the outside. So it's protected, looks good, and it's highly functional at the same time. But here's what I really want to show you is down at the bottom. Now, if you're buying a premium quality hatchet, and make no mistake, this is top end. This is not bargain basement. This is not even high value. This is high end in the quality and construction. But when you're buying one of the things you look for is the grain orientation. Ideally, it should be absolutely vertical, as it is here. Now, sometimes you can accept if it's got a little bit, not to 45, certainly not to 90 degrees of an orientation. But in this case, it is absolutely spot on. But more important, at least to me, is how tight the grain is on that. Now, one of the things I've found in having reviewed some other hatchets and axes by some good, well-known name brands is that you can even get them with a nice vertical grain orientation, as it should have for its strength, but then the grain itself, the rings are further spaced apart. And that tells me it came from a tree that was grown very quickly. When you get the tighter green, that means a slower growing tree, which means, of course, more strength in the wood. So without question, Esker has taken the time to source their wood and look through it to find nothing but the very best wood to make these handles and these halves out of. Now we'll just take a moment to look at the fit and finish. As you can see with the wedge is blended in nicely. There's just a little bit of splaying at the top, which is of course what you would want to see. There are no gaps around the top or at the bottom. The edges are just finished off nicely. There's nothing too sharp. There's no jaggedness. The hammer forging is left on it, just what you would like to see. And you know, that I think may be sharp enough. I haven't actually tried it. Okay, one side is slightly rounded, but that edge may be sharp enough that I can use a ferrocerium rod on it. We'll give it a shot and see how that goes. Now, I just want to look to the design again. So 1.6 pounds, that's a little heavier than a lot of hatchets in this class, and I really appreciate that. This does hit with authority when you're splitting wood with it. But the other thing is look at the profile. Hopefully I'm hitting that straight onto the camera. Look how thin it comes out down through here, and you're wondering where all that weight is. Well, it's all up here in the paw. So that's where the weight is, driving down through a thin bit. This drives deeply into wood. It just drives it in nicely and then just splits it apart with authority. So well designed here. And if you look here at the grind, it is a full convex grind, as you would expect as well. And I didn't feel I needed to do anything to this. I felt that the angle was just, how should I say, gentle enough towards the edge that it was going to have good bite, but not so gentle that I was worried about chipping it or rolling the edge on it or anything. I mean, this is still, I know an overused term is shaving sharp, but this, well, let's see, we'll see if I can't shave a few feathers off of something with it as well. Now, one last thing, and that is where the bit comes down, as you can see here, and the heel here, it just seems to be canted backwards. As you'll see when I go to split some wood with it, that is very intentional, and as is this little notch. That's another thing I've learned about hatchets. This notch is kind of like a tension release when the shock, or a shock absorber, I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, when the shock of an impact goes up through the metal, this tends to take some of it off and allow it to spread through the rest of the hatchet. I know that sounds a little, how should I say, a little over the top, but no, that's what I read. I can't say it does or it doesn't, but certainly I've had no issues with it. It doesn't hurt to have it there, and actually makes it a little bit more comfortable if you're trying to get your hand up there and you want to use it for for carving up by the bit itself, and like I have it holding it here. Yeah, it's worked out well for me. I've been using it for a little while now, splitting some wood, and I think it's time to give you a few demonstrations. All right, my first demonstration is to take down a small dead tree. This is a dead white pine tree. It's a son of a pine. There's the larger parent pine sitting behind it, and this one is died out, presumably because it just lost the competition for sunlight here. It is, well, right at the base. It's an easy 4, maybe 5 inches across, but this has got some height. Another indication that it tried too hard to get to the sun. It's got to be 30 feet in height. That may be a bit of an issue for me. We'll see. I just gave it a really good shake to see if I can't make the top fall off, but it hasn't. But I'll have to keep an eye on it so that I don't have pieces coming down on me when I'm hacking away at it here. Now, I'll be honest, this is not something I do very often. I don't chop trees down. I always have a saw with me, and I would prefer to take this down with a saw, but I do want to demonstrate that you can do this with an axe, or a hatchet in this case, and you can do it quite effectively. Now, just before I get started, here's something I haven't shown you. Little leather mask, high quality leather mask that Esker sent along as well. So that'll go into my pocket, and at the moment I'm finished, I will be putting it back on the edge. Now, I'm kneeling down. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about the top of that, but that's okay. I think that if I gave it a good shake, if it hasn't come down so far, then it shouldn't come down. All right, now I can hold this one-handed or two-handed. Just for a little bit of control, I'll use 2 hands. work on the other side for a second to get a little, this is the direction I want it to fall. I'll make sure it doesn't hit the camera. But I do need to give it a bit of a back cut as well. All right, just about there, and I will finish it off. I may move the camera before I push it over. All right, here we go. All right, hung up a little bit up in the trees right here, and the top did come off as it fell and struck the other tree, so I'm happy about that. Okay, I'm going to finish this off. We'll take it back. I'm probably going to be sectioning it up, and maybe I'll split some of this with the hatchet, but I have a few other demonstrations I want to do as well. Okay, rather than buck up that big piece of pine that's laying on the ground beside me or behind me, I'm going to cut that up with a saw in a few minutes' time. But I do have quite a few pieces of wood here. This, I am pretty sure, is maple, but I'm not positive. It kind of looks like oak on the outside, maple on the ends, but we'll see what it is once I get it split. So, favorite method for splitting wood like this: lay the hatchet on top and give it a good smack. And if it doesn't give the first time, turn it around. There we go. It is maple. Good. It is, but you can see how twisted it up it is. Let's give it a couple more splits down. Ooh, this is some gnarly wood. That's better. I don't know. Some of this is going to be a little harder and harder to get anything that I can feather with it, but it's fine for splitting purposes. Okay, well, nice firewood. We'll see how well it carves. Let me just set the camera up a little closer. We'll see if we can do a little carving with the hatchet. Now, there's a couple of ways, of course, you can use a hatchet for creating shavings. One way that's very popular, I've tried it and it works. I'm just not, I guess I haven't used it enough to really become good at it, is to plant your axe or hatchet into a piece of wood and then draw the wood backwards across the edge for shavings. And of course, the idea is that you get a lot more control because you're controlling the wood instead of the cutting tool itself. Yeah, I believe that's a legitimate way. Like I said, I could probably practice more with that, but until I feel really comfortable with it, I'm not going to demonstrate it. Oh, this is one terrible looking piece of wood, but we'll just quickly see if I can create any shavings. Now, I'm not going to call this a feather stick because I'm probably going to be knocking a lot of these off and then collecting them up. You know, this will do almost as good as a belt knife for this purpose, won't it? Look at that. And then knock that off. I'll save that. Start a second one. But honestly, As well as that does, I think I'd sooner use a knife for that purpose, so it's just nice to know that you can feather with an axe like this. All right, I want to do just a couple more demonstrations with it. All right, I've got a length of maple here that I was using for another project, and what I wanted to demonstrate is putting a point on the end of it. So it's about an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter in diameter, not a tent peg. This is something, if you were maybe constructing a firewall, I don't know, something that we needed a point on a stick to drive it into the ground, or maybe just creating a digging stick. You want some type of a point on it. So quickly, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that made a pretty good point very quickly. And we're going to wrap this video up with just a couple more comments for the Esker Hatchet. So I realized that there were other demonstrations I could have included here. I could have shown limbing a downed tree, very legitimate use for this hatchet. The only thing I would say is it's a bit short. You have to be careful because you don't have the arc you would with something longer. You don't want it coming towards your leg, so you'll have to be more careful with a shorter hatchet like this one, but it can do the job. I could have created some feather sticks, but honestly, I'm more likely going to use my knife, and I think the demonstration with the feather stick, as poor as it was, demonstrates that this has the ability to do some fine carving, so I didn't feel it was necessary to do any more demonstrations than that. In fact, I think those demonstrations that I did highlights what this axe or this hatchet is capable of, and as you saw, it bites into woods with great authority, drives in nicely, but the other thing is it releases well. It doesn't get stuck in there, which is also important. Yeah, some of that wood that I was splitting for firewood was kind of gnarly, didn't want to split well, but that was the wood, not the hatchet, because as you saw, it drove through it. The wood just didn't want to finish splitting after it was driven through. Okay. That's everything I want to show you about the Esker. If you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comment section below. I'll put all the specifications and information I have for you in the video description, as well as the links to 2 places that you can take a look at it. One, Esker of Canada, and the other is the Canadian Outdoor Equipment Company. All right, until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled, because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.